popular demand is the ukulele. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy, a Yankee Doodle do or die. A real life nephew of my Uncle Sam, born on the 4th of July. Yeah, I've got a Yankee Doodle sweetheart. She's my Yankee Doodle joy. Yankee Doodle went to London just to ride a pony. I am a Yankee Doodle boy. Yeah. Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. Why anybody would want me to bust out the ukulele is way beyond me, but I got requests for it. So there you go. Very special episode here today. 247 years ago tomorrow, the United States of America declared its independence from Great Britain, but apparently we can't declare our independence from Great Britain with respect to Prague. Yeah, the two things I love most in this world, well, besides my wife, of course, is Prague and America. Yes, indeed. So I'm combining them today. You know, a lot of people say Prague is the exclusive domain of Great Britain, and I, being an American, I most certainly strenuously disagree with that. Prague means prog rock, progressive rock. The progressive part, hey, the Americans have had that in spades for years, all the way back to, classical composers and other types of songwriters, Cole Porter and George Gershwin and John Cage, and then you got the jazz people, Miles Davis and Dave Brubeck. Bob Dylan showed the world that rock music could be, poetry, could be art. The Beach Boys certainly expanded the artistic nature of technology. Then you had the whole Haight-Ashbury thing, all the psych bands. That's very progressive. Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart, come on, doesn't get much more progressive than that. The Velvet Underground. Rock is an American phenomenon. On top of the progressive part, you've got the rock part. So, even Keith Emerson, probably the king of British prog rock, was enthralled to Leonard Bernstein and Aaron Copland, Scott Joplin and Oscar Peterson. So the American influence on British prog rock was always there. Now, the third wave of prog happened in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was dominated by Scandinavia and American prog metal. We're not going to be talking about prog metal today. I'm going to do a separate episode. I do have one prog metal band on my list today, but there's not going to be Queensryche. There's not going to be Fate's Warning, no Symphony X, no King's X, Shadow Gallery. Man, I listened to them all weekend. I really wanted to put them on the list, but we're going to do capital P prog, so no Baroness, Mastodon, Cynic, Animals as leaders, Scale the Summit, Between the Buried and Me, Primus. We're not going to talk about those, and we're definitely not going to be talking about Tool. Are they prog? I don't know. Maybe they are. Coheed and Cambria definitely tick a lot of the prog boxes. So I'm definitely going to be doing a prog metal episode, American prog metal. Absolutely. And how about a fusion episode? I still haven't done one of those. We could talk about Return to Forever on this episode, or Weather Report, or even get into the horn-driven stuff like Chicago and The Flock, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Mahu Vishnu Orchestra, John McLaughlin was British and Jan Hammer was Czech, so are they American? I don't know, I left them off. I'm going to do a prog metal episode, I'm going to do a fusion episode, and that way I could kind of clear the way for just, pure capital P prog artists in this episode. The one album rule has been lifted, but there are a whole bunch of them that exist. Surprise, Pre, Ad Infinitum, Arabesque, K2, Lip, Gypsy, Netherworld, Moth Vellum. I'm going to do an obscure prog rock episode at some point, obscure American prog. So that's a whole bunch of episodes I need to do to follow it up. But the ones that did not make the list here, The Residents, yeah, I don't know what they are. I love them. Steely Dan, are they prog? I don't know. Swans just dropped a new album. Amazing new album. Are they prog? I don't know. I should do a separate episode just on Swans. Humphreys McGee, Blue Oyster Cult, Mr. Bungle, Liquid Tension Experiment, Secret Chiefs 3, 9 Inch Nails, Captain Beyond, Elder, Evership, Bent Knee, District 97, Pat Metheny, Deluge Grander, Crucible, Bubble Math, Pavlov's Dog. But my last omission, the last one I left off the list that really hurts is Kevin Gilbert / Toy Matinee / Giraffe. What a great loss. His death was the prog community. But here we go. We're 5 minutes in, and I'm just now doing number 25 of the greatest American prog rock bands of all time. It is formed in New York in 1996. These cats have 9 albums out, and I really, really do like their latest one, Don't Panic. This is the Galgano brothers, Tom and John, and they've got 2 female vocalists, Laura Mead and Anne-Marie Burns. Really, really cool band. Brian on drums, and you got another guy, Greg, plays some percussion too. And then you got the brothers, Tom and John Galgano. What a great band. If you like Yes, you'll like Is. At number 24, it's Ambrosia, formed in San Pedro in 1970. Yeah, you know these guys from, their big hits, You're the Only Woman and How Much I Feel and The Biggest Part of Me. But their first 2 albums were super proggy. They were produced by Alan Parsons. It's David Pack, Christopher North, Joe Puerta, and Burley Drummond. And they all sing. So this is a great band. Their first 2 albums are fantastic. The debut dropped in 75. And then their second album, Somewhere I've Never Traveled, that's really, really good too. At number 23, it's Presto Ballet. Yeah, man. Kurt Vonderhoof, the guitar player from Metal Church, man. Go back to 1984 and a couple albums I really, really we're digging back all those many moons ago, 39 years ago. Power Slave from Iron Maiden came out in 84. The second Metallica album, Ride the Lightning, came out in 84. But my favorite album in that genre, that thrash metal-y, progressive metal-y, was that debut album from Metal Church. Oh man, the second album was great too, The Dark. But here we have Kurt doing his prog thing. He's a lifelong fan of bands like Kansas and Yes and Styx. He has described the music as Starcastle with Bruce Dickinson on vocals. They've got 5 albums out. Their third album had Ronnie Monroe, who was one of Metal Church's singers in the middle era. They've had 3 different singers, but I really do dig Presto Ballet a lot. At number 22, let's go to New Jersey and the Fusion 7-piece Thank You Scientist. They were formed in 2009. They only have 3 albums out, so I almost left them off, but all 3 albums are so good. How do you leave them off, man? The debut, Maps of Non-Existent Places in 2012, Stranger Heads Will Prevail in 2016, and the 2019 masterpiece Terraformer. Very fusiony, a lot of weird stuff going on here, just fantastic. At number 21, we're going to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Ethos. This was a band that was actually signed by Capitol. They put out 2 records out for Capitol. 1976's Ardor, fantastic record. And 1977, they followed it up with Open Up, also really good. There's a Happy the Man connection here somehow, but I dig these guys. They put those 2 records out and kind of like disappeared. At number 20, let's get all weird. Let's go to Colorado and get Rocky Mountain High with Thinking Plague. These guys were formed in 1981 in Denver. They've got 7 albums out, and if you like extremely weird avant-garde stuff, Thinking Plague might just be your band, led by Mike Johnson on guitar. The first few albums had Bob Drake, who subsequently would go on to leave and form the 5 UUs, or he was part of the 5 UUs. I don't think he formed them, but I'm going to go with In Extremis from 1998 as their masterpiece, the last one with Bob Drake. Really cool band, love them a lot. At number 19, it's Crack the Sky, West Virginia's greatest prog band. I guess they were more based out of Pittsburgh in the beginning, and then they kind of moved to the Baltimore, Virginia area. area where they became, a little bit more famous. Their first couple albums were really, really good, particularly that debut from 1975. These guys have 20 albums out in total. They're still around, still led by John Palumbo on vocals. Fantastic stuff. At number 18, it's the Mars Volta. Oh, yeah, you guys were asking for it, and you got it. Formed in 2001 in LA from the ashes of the great At the Drive-In, a band I love very, very much. Cedric Bixler and Omar Rodriguez. They went on to form the Mars Volta. The other guys in At the Drive-In went on to form Sparta, which was a little bit more in that post-rock, post-punk kind of feel, whereas the Mars Volta just went off into some bizarre territory. If you take Santana and mix it with Mahu Vishnu Orchestra and throw a little bit of At the Drive-In in, what a crazy band. I love their early stuff. Deloused in the Comatorium from 2003 and Francis the Mute from 2005. But I do like the debut the best. The new album's good. They've got a new direction. I like what they're doing. At number 17, we talked about the one album rule, and here we have Cathedral, great band from Long Island. They actually did put a couple things out later, so they kind of skirted the one album rule, but they were led by Tom Doncourt on keyboards. He left us a couple years ago. Paul Seal on vocals, Rudy Peroni on guitar, Fred Callan on bass, and Mercury Caroni on drums. Stained Glass Stories, their one and only album from 1978, just an absolute masterpiece. So many of the Norwegian and Swedish bands of the third wave took their cue from Cathedral, not least of which is the great Swedish band Anglagard, which at times sounds a lot like them. At number 16, how about Fido? Fido Xavier, the great soap opera director. He's been working on General Hospital for a lot of years, but that helps pay the bills because Prog doesn't pay the bills, that's for sure. He cites Vandergraaf Generator, David Bowie, Genesis and Pink Floyd as main influences, and why not? I am going with the great Doomsday Afternoon from 2007 as his masterpiece, but that kind of started an amazing run of records, number 7, Snow Torch, and Infernal. So that 4-album run from Fido is just amazing. I love him. At number 15, we're going to Detroit Rock City and Discipline, formed in 1987 by Matthew Parmenter. At some point, Dude Man bought a Vandergraaf Generator album and the whole sound of the band changed. But I'm spotlighting 1997's Unfolded Like Staircase. Fantastic. It's a perfect 10. 2011 sought to shatter all accord, and that was really, really good. And 2017, we've had Captives of the Wine Dark Sea, even though their great guitar player, John Preston Budo, no longer in the band, but they're still awesome. At number 14, it's the Deer Hunter, Casey Crescenzo's band that he formed after he left the emo band, The Receiving End of Sirens. They were actually a pretty good band. I like them a lot, and that's why I started listening to Casey's band with all the weird storytelling, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. I'm going to spotlight Act 4, Rebirth and Reprise from 2015 as my favorite album from him, but I could have gone with Migrants, I could have gone with The Color Spectrum, and now he's got a brand new thing. Antomai came out last year, which was great. He's got a new album coming out. Totally new direction for this guy. This is kind of the face of modern prog, and if this is the direction that prog is going in the future, I'm all for it, man. At number 13, this was the big beneficiary. This was the big winner of me discontinuing the one album rule. It's Mirthrander, formed in New Jersey in 1973. This great band put out exactly one album. The only real exception I'm making to this rule is Mirthrander. The other ones that were kind of on the cusp had, some other, archival releases and stuff like that. Not these guys, man. They put out one great album, For You, the Old Woman, in 1976, and that was it. It's incredible. If you like if you like Gentle Giant, if you like Genesis, ELP, you will love Mirthrander. It's John Bislacki III on vocals. Robert Arese on drums, Richard Excelante on guitar, who I guess just left us, Alexander Romanelli, second guitar, Simon Gannett on keyboards, and James Miller on bass. I love Mirthrander, and yeah, the reason I did, put to bed the rule was because several people from the Mirthrander camp actually reached out to me and said, thank you so much for talking about my dad's band or something like that. So I had to include him at number 12. Let's go to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Glass Hammer, the great band formed in 1992 by Steve Babb and Fred Schendel. These cats had 21 albums out. Funny enough, their very first album, they actually sold like 10 or 15,000 copies on QVC, which kind of gave them the idea that, maybe prog rock isn't 100% dead. Maybe people do want to hear, progressive rock. And they were so right. Somewhere along the line, they picked up a guy named John Davison on vocals. He did 3 vocals with them. The album I'm spotlighting here is the first one with John Davison on vocals. It's called If. Came out in 2010. I think it's like their 11th overall album. They have a brand new album coming out, a whole new space trilogy that's due to be dropped upon the world. God bless Glass Hammer at number 11. It's Yezda Urfa, formed in 1973 in and around the Chicago area. This band recorded a demo called Boris and then broke up and nobody ever heard about them ever again. I guess they were working on another album when they broke up, but this Boris demo did get into the hands of some powerful people who then went on to reissue, the one they were working on called Sacred Baboon. Actually finally released in 1989, but we're going to focus on Boris, their 1975 demo. It's just so DIY. It's just so, lo-fi. It's just amazing. It's like Yes and Genesis and Gentle Giant all of a sudden hooked up with Guided by Voices or Sebado to do some lo-fi stuff. It's just amazing. After they were rediscovered in the 80s and 90s, they did do a one-off appearance at 2004's Nearfest, where the great Rick Rodenbach was replaced by Ronnie Platt on vocals. Ronnie Platt, of course, now with Kansas. And we're in the top 10 AmeriProg, boys and girls. At number 10, it's Starcastle, formed in 1972 in Champaign, Illinois. Somewhere along the line, they picked up a vocalist called Terry Luttrell, who sang on REO Speedwagon's first album. You've got Matthew Stewart and Stephen Hagler on guitar, the great Herb Schilt on keyboards, shout out to Herb, good dude, Gary Strader on bass, R.I.P. Gary, and Steven Tassler on drums. Yeah, their first 3 albums are amazing. I love the debut, 1976. It's my favorite, but the Roy Thomas Baker produced follow-up, Fountains of Light, real good. And also from 1977, their third album, Citadel, also produced by RTB. Then they had a commercial 4th album. They disappeared, came out with Song of Times in 2007, which is actually really good. They're not Yes clones, boys and girls. They're just a great prog band. At number 9, it's Happy the Man, formed in Virginia in 1972. Yeah, these guys were playing dinner theaters and doing all kinds of stuff until at some point Peter Gabriel got interested in perhaps using them as their backup band, which is interesting because the name of the band Happy the Man had nothing to do with the Genesis song Happy the Man. That was just pure coincidence, apparently. I don't like coincidences a whole lot. Their debut album came out in 1977 after Clive Davis from Arista heard them and said, I don't understand this music, but I like it. I'm signing it. The great Ken Scott produced that first album. So you had Stan Whitaker, Frank Wyatt, Kit Watkins, Rick Kennel, and Mike Beck. And then for the second album, Mike Beck quit and he was replaced by Ron Riddle. And I guess Ken Scott was really upset about it. He didn't even want to produce the second album because Mike wasn't there, but he did. And it's every bit as good as the debut at number 8. Let's slide up I-95 a little bit and let's go to Philadelphia, formed in 1989 as the Great Echoland. Wow. Yeah, these guys only have 9 albums out. I guess they're working on a new one. It's Ray Weston and Brett Call and, a couple other guys with them. I like their first album, but their second album, man, from 1992, Suffocating the Bloom, just fantastic. After that, they got picked up by Sony for an album. As the World was released on a Sony imprint, did absolutely nothing. But it is so rare that a prog band in the 90s were getting signed by a major label. Yeah, I'm going with Suffocating the Bloom. I easily could have gone with 2002's May, which is almost as good. Imagine if your prog has just a little bit of Americana in there. That would be Echoland. At number 7, talking about Americana mixed in prog. How about the Dixie Dregs, formed in Augusta, Georgia in 1970 by the great Steve Morse? They put out an album that nobody ever heard of, and then Free Fall came out in 1977. I'm spotlighting their actual second album, What If, from 1978. Man, I remember walking into the record store, Peaches in Fort Lauderdale in 78, and they're playing What If on In-Store Play. I thought it was a new Kansas album, but it's prog. It's got American boogie and bluegrass and country and fusion. It's got everything, man. I just love it. At number 6, it's Utopia. And primarily on the strength of one album, even though Another Live and Rob both had plenty of prog in them. It was that debut Utopia album that came out in 1974 on the heels of Todd Rundgren's Wizard of True Star in 73, which half of that was all prog. So this was the logical next step for him. After Ra, they went awry, man. 1977, they dropped 2 albums, a masterpiece called Ra and a piece of junk called Oops, Wrong Planet. They never really righted the ship, and they never went prog again. But this is Todd Rundgren, Chasm Sultan, John Wilcox, and Roger Powell. Not on the first album. That was a whole different bunch of people, but I love Utopia. I love that first album. I love Ra so much that they got to number 6 on this list. At number 5, I said we weren't doing prog metal, but I have to make an exception for Dream Theater. You know I do, man. They're the proggiest of all the prog metal bands, and their connection to other prog, you know, the tentacles of Dream Theater go off in so many different directions. Formed in Boston in 1985 at Berklee School of Music. They called themselves Majesty. It was John Petrucci, John Mayung, and Mike Portnoy, and they had a different singer, Charlie Dominici. He was eventually replaced by James Labrie. And the keyboard situation, you had Kevin Moore replaced by Derek Sherinian, replaced by Jordan Rudess, and then at the drum kit, you had Mike Portnoy play on 10 albums, and he left for Mike Mangini. I'm spotlighting their 5th album, though, man. Metropolis 2, Scenes from a Memory, from 1999. Just incredible. I will be doing a prog metal episode for the, those of you that like the heavier stuff. At number 4, let's go to Chicago and Styx. They started out calling themselves Trade Winds in 1972. The Panazzo brothers, they were twin brothers. They were joined by Dennis D. Young, James Young, and John Kuralewski, who left the band after 5 albums and replaced by Tommy Shaw. From Equinox to Pieces of 8, I think Styx was perfect, man. Those 4 albums are incredible. Their last 2 albums, The Mission and Crash of the Crown, are just great. I know Dennis D. Young's not in the band anymore, but the latest 2 Styx albums are really, really good. And I am going to spotlight their absolute masterpiece, 1977's The Grand Illusion. I don't think they ever topped that. Not a whole lot of bands ever did top that. At number 3, it's Spocks Beard, man. And yeah, I'm going to put Spocks Beard / Neil Morse / Neil Morse Band / Flying Colors, all that other stuff. But Spocks Beard was formed in 1992 in LA by Neil and his brother Alan. He was joined by David Miros and a drummer by the name of Nick DiVirgilio, who maybe went on to do a couple of things in his career. After the first album, Ryo Okamoto joined the band. I'm spotlighting Spocks Beard's 5 from 2000. I love this record. Neil did 6 albums with Spocks Beard, then he left, and Nick DiVirgilio took over vocals for 4 albums. Then he left, and you had Ted Leonard on 3. And then Neil's been doing all his solo stuff, and the Neil Morris Band and all that crazy stuff. The future of Spocks Beard is definitely in question with pattern-seeking animals, kind of taking up a lot of that space. Jimmy Keegan, Dave Miros, the great John Bagold, and Ted Leonard. And then the Neil Morse Band, takes a lot of that, energy and oxygen away from the whole Spocks Beard idea. We may never see another Spocks Beard album. I hope we do, though. At number 2, it's Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. Formed in 1964 when Frank joined a band called the Giant Souls. They called themselves the Mothers originally, and MGM wasn't having any of that, so they made them add the Mothers of Invention on there, a little less suggestive, I guess. Freak Out came out in 1966. It was the second double album in the history of popular music after Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. The run of greatness that Frank Zappa had, especially early on in the late 60s, early 70s, unrivaled, ridiculous. I mean, just in the 60s, man, you had Freak Out, Absolutely Free in 67, We're Only in It for the Money in 68, Uncle Meat in 69, Hot Rats in 69. Man, we're not even into the 70s yet, but I am going to spotlight a 70s album, 1975's One Size Fits All, the last time he used the Mothers of Invention moniker with a great lineup of Ruth Underwood, Chester Thompson, George Duke, Napoleon Murphy Brock, Tom Fowler. What a great band. He always had great bands, man. Anytime Zappa was on tour, you knew the dudes on stage with him were top notch, and the records weren't half bad either. And at number 1, the greatest AmeriProg band of all time. You know who it is, boys and girls. Wheatheads rejoice. It's Kansas. Formed in Topeka in 1970. I love this band so much, especially their first 6 albums. I'm going to debut the Spotlight the debut album from 1974. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. But Song for America, great. Mask, great. Left Overture, masterpiece. Point of No Return, masterpiece. Monolith, real good. So yeah, those first 6 albums are it for me. Kerry Livgren, Steve Walsh, Robbie Steinhardt, Dave Hope, Rich Williams, and Phil Earhart. Those last 2 still in the band. Kansas still going strong. And looking forward to even more new music from my favorite American prog band, Kansas. Anyway, that's my wrap up of the top 25. And I will be doing a prog metal episode. And I will be doing a obscure American prog. So there's a whole lot to get to, man. It's just incredible. I'll probably do a prog fusion episode at some point because there's just so many great American bands. It's absolutely ridiculous. I had no idea when I started this how difficult this was actually going to be. So I apologize if your favorite was left off, but let me know in the comments what you think. And anyway, have a great 4th of July for my viewers in America and to all of you around the world. I just hope that American exceptionalism and, American pride isn't, too much for you to handle. I know at the end of every episode, I've been signing off with God Save the King. And I know that may have, rubbed a couple people the wrong way. James from Ireland, I'm so sorry. You got to know I'm being half sarcastic when I'm doing it. But, I don't get into the politics. You guys know that. I don't get into the politics. I don't get into the religion. I just want to talk about prog rock on this channel. Anyway, I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow, but I bet it's going to be related to America somehow. Anyway, I am Scott. I love you guys. Peace in the Middle East. And guess what? Yeah, God save the king. That one was for you, James in Ireland. Anyway, have a great day. God bless America.